So, as I was saying earlier, the talk today is about revising for GCSE Latin. It is not necessarily about what are the best ways to learn Latin, because that's a long-term project. This is short-term project. This is the exam is around the corner. What can I do? I need help. And the three areas I am going to be discussing are the main building blocks of any of the examining board. So if you do OCR, EDUCAS, or IGCSE, it's the same thing. You need to be in command of your vocabulary. If you don't know your vocabulary, there's no way you're going to do well in your exam. Even if you know your grammar really well, you've memorized your set text, nothing is going to help. Vocabulary is the key to a language. Then I'm going to talk about endings, because sometimes students spend hours revising the endings, but they don't get any results. Now, Latin is difficult, I agree, but it is not that difficult. You shouldn't be spending hours and not seeing any results. If that's happening, it is because something is not quite right in the way you are revising. And this is something, even if you don't know any Latin, I'm going to show you some techniques that you can talk about with your teens who are about to sit this exam to help them. You don't need to know Latin to help them revise and to help them realize what they should be doing. So you don't need to know Latin. I know that some people are like, oh, I never studied Latin, or I studied Latin, I hated it. It happens, particularly 20 years ago, it did happen. Nowadays, it doesn't happen that much. And then I'm going to talk about the set text. Now, for those of you who are here because the children are about to start GCSE, but you're starting to prepare and think, what is that all going to be about? The set text is a literary text, and I have to say the choices are always great. They're beautiful texts. They're texts that are proper, serious Latin literary texts, as I was saying. And the students have read them before. They have read them in class with their teacher. They have translations and they've discussed them. Now, in the exam, they're expected to remember what the text means. And we are going to see in more detail what that actually means. That doesn't mean memorizing the whole text in English, which is what some people may be tempted to do. But they're also supposed to be responding to it personally. They're going to have to give their opinion on what is happening in the text. They're going to have to explain it in their own words. And most importantly, they are going to have to comment on the literary qualities of the text, what we call literary analysis, really. So, without further ado, we can get started with the vocabulary, the dreaded vocabulary list. Now, I have it here. I know that it can look daunting, but I will show you that actually this is just quite a lot of paper, not that much to learn when you think about it at the end of a process of learning Latin over the years. So the best way to learn Latin vocabulary is reading and listening extensively. You don't have a lot of time for that before the exam, but you do still have time to reread some of the texts that have been translated in class. For example, if they've been working with Latin to GCSE or Latin stories and they have those translations, they should read the text now that they understand them and enjoy reading it and get into the sounds of the language and read them aloud. So this still has a space. It is a bit late, but there is still space to get used to the language and breathe it in, internalize it, get used to it. Now, with vocabulary, it is use it or lose it, which is why reading and listening helps so much, because you keep encountering the same words in different contexts, and you can then consolidate them really well. Now, with the Latin vocabulary list, that is all a bit artificial. As we all know, Latin is not a language that we speak every day. Well, I do, but most people don't. And you need to find strategies to make those words appear. And particularly when you're nearing the exam, you can't rely on, oh yes, lots of reading, because you want to focus on the actual vocabulary. Now I'm going to show you an example of what I want you to do with a vocabulary list. Yeah. Now I am trying to see myself on Facebook. Seeing me and hearing me well. I am on Zoom today. Most people trying to now see the comments. I don't know if there are any comments or not. Let me put it up with the volume down, just to make sure I'm not having any questions. No one is asking anything yet. So let's move on. Now we are going to move on to the vocabulary list. Yeah. Now this is the GCSE vocabulary list. You will all be very familiar. It looks terrible when you look at it like that. It looks like lots and lots and lots and lots of words. However, for your students who have been learning Latin for at the very least 2 years, probably more, most of the words in the list will already be very familiar. I mean, how many times will they have seen? Now let's find an example of a word that they all know. Even people who don't know Latin know this. Et. Et, we all know et. And now those words, they can remove them straight away. I suggest the words that they know for sure that they know, they can go over them once or twice. That's that. Then create a new list with only the words that you're finding difficult. And now here comes the first warning that is very important that you give to anyone revising a vocabulary list like this one here. You must learn all the principal parts. That means the first column here and the second column here. You don't want to just learn. Let me make this a bit bigger so that I can show you with an example. Let's find the worst offender here, the verb fero. Yeah, let's say you're learning the verb fero, and a student might think, oh, the verb fero. What does fero mean? Fero means I bring, or I carry, I bear. That's that. I know the verb fero means to carry. It's not as easy as that. They do need to learn all the principal parts. So they also have to learn fero, ferre, tuli, latus. Why? Because in the exam, in the text, it will not say fero. It might say tulerunt. And you need to know that means they brought. And you need to know that's the perfect and comes from this third principal part. This applies as well to when your student, your learner, comes to you and says, oh, I have this vocabulary list. Can you test me on it? Which, by the way, is a great way to use those words, hearing them, saying them, forcing the brain to think about them. Don't only ask them for the first column. Don't say to them, oh, what does frater mean? Or what does femina mean? Say to them, oh, can you tell me, for example, what festinare is? And they will say, oh, that's the infinitive of festino, or it comes from festino. Really, I'm happy with that. If only they give that, that's good. They know, they can see that it comes from the verb festino. Some words you will notice, and here I'm talking to the people mostly who have not necessarily done Latin themselves. You will see that some words, it says indeclinable. Now, that's not the second part of the word at all. That simply means that you don't change the endings of those words because they're generally adverbs or conjunctions. So you don't change the endings. So they're super easy to learn those. Yeah, there are and, but, with, through, towards, all those. Yeah. So this is the vocabulary list. I suggest, I will summarize what I suggest. Make sure you study all principal parts, not just the first column. That's a big temptation, big temptation. And also make sure when you're testing, ask from the English into the Latin. I know that not all students are going to sit an exam where they are translating from English to Latin. However, is the foolproof way to make sure you do know the words is to translate from English into Latin. And I suggest everyone does it as part of their revision. Now, having said this, I'm going to look at different strategies to learn vocabulary. And I have a document where I list 10 very useful strategies to learn vocabulary. I will show it briefly now, but I will be putting it in the resources of the 11 plus ISEP SATs GCSE and A-level resource group. And so that you can download it and look at it in peace. Now, there are a lot of different things that you can do to learn a word. Students sometimes just sit there and read the word time and again, and then cover it and read it and don't even say the word. Now, here I give you some ideas about how you can manipulate the word so that you're consolidating it. For example, you can sing it if a word is particularly difficult for you, and you can make a song with it. I don't know, with the word "tamen," however, I don't know, but probably your students will be more musical than me. They'll do better at that one. I'll sing the happy birthday at the end, though. That's a good one. They can turn it into art. They can actually turn the word into something with a little card, as we all do. I mean, cards, it's quite standard. They can read it aloud, and I definitely recommend doing that. Acting. Now, I know I have here one of the techniques that I have is label the house. Go around the house with Post-it notes and put them on the things. Now that I sometimes teach students, particularly Spanish, particularly students who are my Latin students and want to do Spanish, and it makes sense we do both together. And I say, yeah, go around the house, put the Post-its everywhere. Yeah, you have this, you have that, the window, whatnot, everything in the vocabulary list. Most things are tangible and in your house. Yeah. Now with Latin, you can do that because not many of us keep an army in the house, or when we think about the body parts, we want to concentrate on the blood, which is one of the words that we have in the Latin vocabulary list. And the same goes with all the slaves people, the enslaved people, or the swords. Yeah. So of all the systems, I would say labeling no. However, you can use it on printouts. Yeah, I have plenty of printouts with my students that I show them, and then they need to write down the names of what the things are in them. And that works much better. Right. So we've seen the vocabulary list. I have given you a couple of tips about how you test a student on that list and how that student is supposed to be saying the words, hearing the words, not just reading them, as we say in Latin, ad nausea. Yeah, until they're too tired of it. Right. Let's take a look at two verbs that most students, and I don't want to say all, but most students will lose marks on at least once. Cupio and capio. Now, these are not the only words that are ridiculously similar inside the vocabulary list, but there are two of the really important ones. So I'm going to take them as an example. Cupio and capio. Now, first thing is, don't just learn cupio and capio, and that's that. Make sure, as we were saying earlier, when you have your vocabulary cards, your song, whatever you're going to do with it, write all the meanings of the word, like capio, capere, kepi, captus. So you get all the principal parts, and then all the meanings: take, catch, capture. If you prefer images are great for revising vocabulary. Absolutely, like here I have a cat catching a mouse, because cats take, catch, capture. That's what they do. They're predators. So the capturers. And make a special note when there's a meaning which is far from the basic meanings. For example, concilium capere is to make a plan. It's a bit different. It's important to make a note. Then cupio, cupere, cupivi, cupitus. That's want and desire. Make sure you put both of them Yeah, because it's not the same to want something than it is to desire something. So you want to be able to think about those two meanings when you see the word. Now imagine your student has already learned that capio is capio, capere, cepi, captus, and then cupio is cupio, cupere, cupivi, cupitus. But they still, when they see them, they're like, oh, cupiverunt. Oh, what might that be? Is it they took, they desired, or cepi is that I took, I wanted? Right. In that case, why don't you use a little bit of acting? I use it all the time. Use your hands when you're revising. Don't just sit there rigidly. That's not a medieval scriptorium in your room. You can walk around, ask the student to walk around, which is also very good for blood flow anyway. Now, for example, and this is an example, I would prefer people to create their own because it works much better if you create your own. With capio, you could go like capio, capere, cepi, captus, cap, like capture. You're catching. You could even do it like throwing a ball up and down, capio, capere, cepi, captus. Now, if you link some gestures with a particular word, only thinking about the gesture, doing the gesture will help you remember the word. Believe me, it sounds a bit crazy, and I don't want people in the exams dancing around, although by all means, if that's what it takes to get the marks, do it, quietly, obviously. But it does work. It works very well. Believe me, give it a try, you will see how it works. I still remember things I learned with, when I was a child, I had to learn the capitals of the whole planet and all the countries. And I still remember songs I made up for some of the capitals. Now, cupio, I've put a little cupid here. Well, the word cupid actually comes from cupio, which is want and desire. So maybe you could go something like cupio, cupio, cupu, pupu, so cute, cool, one desire, or cupio, I really want it. Yeah. So capio, cupio. I don't know, imagine Gollum there, my precious. It's up to you. Whichever works for your family, for your learner, is fine. Yeah. There's no rules here because you're not going to be tested on the sums that you're doing. You're going to be tested on how able you are to remember that cupere means to desire or to want. Yeah, this is an example. I use some of them that I use them all the time. Like, well, you can all guess what this is curre, curro, currere, cucurri, cursus. Yeah. Obviously, then you have all the necare and vocare, vocad, voco. Yeah. So you see how that works. Now, if for people who, I see some people who have joined recently, I'm going to recap a little bit. My name is Anna. I teach Latin and Greek, and today I'm talking about techniques to do the last minute revision for the Latin GCSE exams in particular. Yeah. And please share if you have any questions. I'm going to be here for quite a while, have a few activities to get through, but mostly I'm here so that if you have a question, I can answer it. The video will also stay in one of the guides, so you can watch it and you can always put a message in the group. The 11 plus ICEP, SATS, GCSE, and A-level resources group is amazing. So if you put a message there, I might not even get there in time. Somebody might have helped you. So please share your worries. That's what the group is there for. And that's why it's powerful and useful. Now, those of you who are watching, if I give you the form cupiwi, will you know from which of these two it comes? Would it be like want, or will it be from catch? Yes, probably you're thinking it right. Yes, it's from cupio. Remember, when you say cupio to a student, the student should be able to go to like cupio, cupere, cupivi, cupitus. Yeah, think about cupid, and it means desire. You need all that information for a word. You can't just get one form. That's how people lose marks. Now, another activity that you can do, and this is a neat one I've done because I wanted a poster to give to people. These are the top problematic words. Let me get my screen color a bit different because I keep seeing green flashes behind me, and these, you may be getting a bit annoyed by them. I'm gonna, yeah, there we are, much better. So visually, it's very important to write the words next to each other and use colors, even textures if you want. It's up to you what you use to show what in the word is different. For example, let's take a look at sumus and summus. Sumus is we are. So you could write here a couple of people. Oh, they're saying we are. And summus is the top of. So you could put like a little mountain, just saying. But look at the shape of these two words together. Some people might find it useful. 1M, 2M, high, something like that. Yeah. This is also a downloadable document. It's actually already in the resources, this one, because I find it really useful. Only thing to be careful with this resource, which I always tell my students before I give them the resource, yakio, yakeo, yes, remember this, but also remember the 4 principal parts of each of them. So as long as yakio triggers all the other parts, that is fine that you learn it with the 2 words for the purpose of comparing them. Right, let us move on to vocab testers. I mean, it's not a secret. Students love testing online, doing tests, click, 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 click. Now, that's helpful for a little bit of revision and for checking things. But as the only method of learning, it doesn't work. You need to be writing the words. You need to be saying the words. Am I saying don't use vocabulary testers online? No, I'm absolutely not saying that, because I'm going to show you my favorite one right now. I'm just saying use them with measure. Yes, they're not bad for you. They have a purpose and they achieve it well. But if you use it for more things that you should be using them, then you're starting to waste your time and just playing games. Yeah. So I'm going to show you my favorite one, the one I recommend my students use, and it's from the Hands Up group. I don't know how familiar you are with the Hands Up group. They've recently released a new Latin course that's called Soburani, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's mind-blowing. And they also have this section where they have the vocabulary testers and help for OCR and EDUCAS. Yeah, so you, whichever of the examining boards you use, it's very useful. So you get the vocabulary trainer, and I'm going to click on it. We can like just, this is just to show you how it works. So you choose how much time you want to give per word. I like to give, like, say, let's be nice, 12 seconds. You can get it to type hints for you. Now, when the student is learning, I would say like start at the 3 letters, because I'm the teacher, I'm gonna say 5 letters. Direction, Latin to English, and then you can choose whether you want verbs, nouns, adjectives, pronouns. This is fantastic. We're gonna go for all words. You can also choose which words, yeah, but we're gonna go for all words. And then you can type it, which I think is very useful because it's less passive, or you can pick. On this occasion, we're just going to pick. So nomen, nominis. Oh, look at time is running. You go for name. There we are. Was vestrum, you plural. Began. Well, you don't need to show me anymore. It works like that. It's very useful in that you can review all the words in one place. So it's either you have a word is, but I thought that meant, I don't know, tamen, it says, it means however, but I thought it meant finally. How do you say finally? So you go control find, write finally, and there you have it. Yeah, so it's super useful, and you can see your results here. And if you have an account with them because you're using Soburani, which some schools do, or if you have a tutor who has it, then you can also store your results and see a historical of it. So really useful. Hands Up, the Latin OCR vocabulary tester. absolutely recommended. Yeah. So if you're going to use one, use that one. Now, let's talk a little bit about the endings. When I meet people and I tell them I'm the Latin teacher, some of them go like, oh, Rosa, 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 Rosa. I'm like, oh, ooh. Thank you. And they're like, it's all I remember. And I'm like, oh, what do you do with that? It's like, nothing. Please, don't be that person. Don't you just learn endings because you've been told you need to know your endings. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. Yes, you need to learn your endings, but make sure that you are seeing them in context, that you are revising your notes. And then once you are reading and listening quite a bit, are familiar with the forms, then use it or lose it, you must see the forms a lot. Yes. And when you're revising the endings, make sure you do it orally. So you say them. Some people like chanting them. I mean, who doesn't? Bo, bis, bi, bimus, bitis, bunt. Yeah, all that. But also write them, copying many times in the 10 ways to learn Latin vocabulary document that I'm going to put in the resources. There's one activity where you do concertina and you copy and cover and then end up with an accordion of a document where you can learn the endings very well. Now, another way is, and this is an example, for the third declension, just an example, yeah? It's very daunting to just go rex, rex, regem, regis, regi, rege. But if you write it down, and nowadays with technology is so much easier, you can remove some of the words. Now it becomes much easier because you only need to fill in the gaps. You can copy it again, fill in the gaps. And because there's some order, like rex, rex, is always the same, nominative and vocative, the accusative, you expect an M. The first times you do it, it's quite easy. Then you start removing more. And then finally there's nothing. And if you've been writing it down and checking it, your student should now be able to say rex, rex, regem, regis, regi, rege, reges, 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 regum, regibus, regibus. Believe me, it is the case. Now, let me check again if there are any questions. Everyone's very quiet. I am aware that it's Friday night. The gestures, somebody's saying the gestures are beneficial. Yes, they are very, very, very beneficial. Correre, to run. Right, so let's move on to the set text. The set text is the place where students think they are doing really well, because sometimes, not all students, but some students just take the text, the translation of the text that they're studying, and memorize it separately from the Latin text. Now, it is easier to do that than it is to sit and explore the text and get into the story. And it gives you, I guess it gives them a feeling of control because they know what it says. But then often people end up relying too much on the English. And when they need to comment on the use of the language, the alliterations, the onomatopoeias, repetition of words, if it's not laid out in that way in the translation, often they struggle. And what is worse, when they're asked to translate, sometimes they put in the wrong fragment, which is where the examiners, I mean, I've marked exams, when you're marking exams, you know, the student who learned the text only in English. So I would say, if you see your learner going around repeating an English text on its own, stop them. They're wasting their time. They're just fooling themselves, and it's not going to work. They need to work on the text. Now, there are many texts I can't go into all of them at the same time, but most people use the Cambridge Latin Anthology. Now, for those who use the Cambridge Latin Anthology, luckily, you have a lovely tool in the Cambridge Latin course website where you can see the whole story like this, and then click on the words, and you are given not only the translation at the bottom with all the principal parts, but well, that's it. The translation at the bottom with all the principal parts, that's what you're given. Yeah, so you get a little bit of a check. You can also then, this is really important. Let me start from the beginning, because I got a bit, I was just reading the story. I shouldn't have been thinking about Piso and everything. Now, Germanicus and Piso, one of my favorite texts, I must admit. After you've been clicking the words, which are the ones you didn't understand, when you are trying to read it and see if you understand it, like word by word, rather than memorizing your English translation, you can then check yourself and see which words you had to click on, make a list of those, and make sure you understand them. It's not a monolith. You will not learn the set text as a whole. You will learn it by understanding it and immersing yourself in the story. So for any set text that you're doing, do find the tools. This is just an example of the tools that are around. If you want specific advice for a specific text, do leave a message and I will check it out and find it for you. Yeah, so most of them have either text that you can listen to or clickable. Some of them even now have audiobooks that you can listen to and see the translation simultaneously, word by word. It's amazing. That will be another day. I'll talk about these apps another day, because it's a whole separate point. Now, if you haven't learned Latin, this will be the bit that you will find most challenging supporting your learner. And it is a fact. If you knew Latin, you could read through the text, and then, for example, something that works really well is to give them a few words in English, like after he heard these things, and they need to give you the Latin, or the other way around, or you could like quiz them on the text. But not everyone knows Latin. We can't all know every language, but there are some things that you can do to help your learner, and I think they are very important. And I know it is now quite late, but some of you will be watching this in year 10 or even in year 9, or still will have some time to do things if your student is not too strapped for time with other subjects. So what I say is, get them to like the text. You don't learn about something you don't like. And if you make Latin dry, it becomes very difficult to learn. Now, find out what text your learner is learning in school, what author even. Yes, sometimes you could do like a more general conversation with them. And why don't you watch a documentary about it? I mean, there are plenty. I don't know if you have Masolit. It works best for A level, but there are some interesting talks in there. In Our Time has plenty of podcasts that you can listen to. The BBC is full of documentaries as well. So you can find something that aligns with the set text. Again, if you don't know what to do with your particular set text, do write it. Even if you watch this video in a couple of days, do write a question there, and I will and mention me, and I will find a way for you to work on this text with your student. I might send you to a museum or something, depending on where you live. Now, you can also ask them about the story. Some of the stories are quite juicy, so you can ask, oh, why did they kill him? And why was he upset? And why did she do this? Yeah, so ask them to use their own words as well, because what happens often is that the students are so worried about memorizing exactly what it means that they're not able to put it in their own words, which is what they're going to be doing in the exam, really. So get them to use their own words to tell you the story. Do a little bit of storytelling together. They are all very exciting stories. None of those texts are boring, I can say. And then why not create a poster with keywords? Some students love posters, some students hate posters, you know your student best. But if they like art, they could draw the characters and write some words around them and imagine what they would look like, or do a little comic of the story. This is something you can support them in, even if you don't know a lot of Latin. You can ask them to leave the quotations and then look in one of these automatic translations. But when I say automatic translations, I don't mean Google Translate. We'll talk about Google Translate in a second. Right, so let me summarize a little bit for anyone's joined recently or anyone's been lost. What have I talked about? I talked about vocabulary, I have talked about endings, and I have talked about the set text. And now, these are the pillars of this exam. Yeah. Now I'm going to talk about what you should do and what you should not do. Ooh, I almost showed them what I was going to do next. There we are. So you'll need to wait for the singing. I'm not going to sing yet, even though I just showed the little cake, which I shouldn't have. So what do you do with your learner to help them with the Latin exam? Read and reread texts regularly. And this applies to the first week they're learning Latin and to the week before the exam. People underestimate how important it is to be familiar with a language, to be what we call fluent in a language. Latin is a language. It's not a frog that you are dissecting. It's not a Sudoku puzzle. If you get used to the language, when you hear it, when you read it, you will understand it. I know it's difficult to do this last minute if you've been on a rut of just memorizing grammar and then sort of trying to do like some sort of operations as if it was maths to find out what the text might mean. But there's always time to bring a bit of Latin into your life. So why not? Yeah. Also work on past papers. I know sometimes they can be quite dry, the past papers, but compared to other subjects, I have to say, Latin has the most interesting stories. I mean, you have people being turned into cows, you have all sorts of love stories. So you have the mark scheme, you have the past papers, you can help your learner work through that. Now, sing, which is what I'm going to do next. Sing, please, sing. There are plenty of YouTube artists these days that sing online and sing very well. Actually, there's recently this young man called Scorpio Partianos has released a version of We Don't Talk About Bruno, and it's hilarious. I really suggest you take a look at Disney songs in YouTube. They get through your ears, even if they're not the Latin vocabulary for the GCSE exam, you get the language in that way. Then write. Don't just read, sit there reading, write the words and write them again. And then the following day, you write them one more time. Yeah. And the same for full text as well. And be noisy. When you're studying, don't just read to yourself, read aloud. Some students and some parents, I have to say, don't understand the importance of this. And I can't emphasize this enough. You don't take a word and go like, okay, let me see, what do I have here? Let me find one that people, yeah, expectare. You could go like whatever, yeah, I've seen it, I know what it means, yeah. No, you need to say expectare. Yeah, say the words. Latin is helpful in that it's generally, most of the time, one letter, one sound. So use that, use the phonetical transparency of Latin to make sure you are saying every sound in the word. And you are like, how do we call this? Munching the word before you swallow it. Chewing the word before you swallow it. Don't just swallow. Chew them and see what they taste like. Say them. Now, things that you should not do, and these are very important. Abusing the dictionary. Now, we all love having dictionaries. I mean, if I turn my camera, you'd be shocked what I have there. I have so many dictionaries. However, the Latin GCSE exam is not the moment you want to be using random dictionaries or buying a dictionary and starting using it. You want to use the vocabulary list, because if you look up a word in the dictionary will be more advanced than the GCSE exam. It will give you lots of meaning and it will be a bit confusing. Now we are focusing on the GCSE exam. So use the GCSE list. They are going to include it in a context where it means what they've asked you to learn. So stay focused. Once you go into a level, crazy, you can expand from there. Particularly A2 is fantastic. But GCSE, it's important not to start using dictionaries that are not the glossary list. Yeah. Now, Google Translate, worst enemy. Don't use Google Translate. It doesn't work very well. It has improved greatly recently, because every now and again I try it and so let's see what it says. It used to be absolutely ridiculous. Now it gets some things right, but it's going to be misleading. So don't use it. It's not an easy solution. If you are very stuck, why don't you just put it in the group and ask people, say, I'm doing this sentence and I really can't get to the bottom of it. Somebody might be able to help you better than Google Translate. Now, don't memorize what you do not understand. And I think I've said a few times this. I've said it with the vocabulary, I've said it with the endings, and I've said it with the set texts. Memorizing things for the sake of it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work to learn a language in general, and particularly it doesn't work to get a good mark at GCSE, because they're not going to say, okay, can you give me the full conjugation of the verb trajo, trajere, traxi, tractus? And then you go like trajo, trajis, trajis. It doesn't work like that. Now, it is useful to know those endings, because when you find an ending, you could go like, oh, was this perfect or imperfect? Let's see, the perfect was this, the imperfect was that. Oh, okay, it's imperfect. So I'm going to say he was dragging, for example. But just learning for the sake of learning, seek help. It's not going to work. And the last do not rule I have here is do not rely exclusively on online tools. Online tools are very useful, and sometimes it's a good way to put 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there when you're on your phone out and about. It's a great way to learn a language. I mean, I do it with other languages I'm learning. I just have apps and look at them. But if you only rely in passive learning, sitting there, seeing words, clicking, when it comes to using them more actively, it's not going to work. Now, again, I'm going to reiterate it. If you are going to use a tool online, use the hands up one, because also you can be tested in the case of the verbs, for example, for all the principal parts. Yeah, not just for the first one. If you use Quizlets that other people have put online, or say Memrise that other people have put online, you run a risk there that they haven't put all the parts and you are not learning it in depth enough that you'll be able to use it. So use the hands up one, use that vocabulary tester. It has plenty of choice when it comes to the verbs. I haven't shown it, but it's at the bottom of the page. You have the verbs there, plenty of choice, and it works very well. So this was everything, but I'm not going to go without singing happy birthday to Agnes. Now, I said I was going to find version of the song, which is in the Latin vocabulary list. And I've just seen, I put cara there with, which is the vocabulary list. It means dear. Everyone knows that you put dear in the happy birthday song. Other than that, the song we're going to sing is may it be a happy day to you. May it be a happy day to you. May it be a happy day. Dear Agnes, lovely Agnes, may it be a happy day to you. Now, the verb to be is in the vocabulary list, not in the present subjunctive, but it doesn't matter. We don't recognize it. So there we go. If anyone wants to sing along from your houses, nobody's going to hear you, so please do. It's a good way to get the sounds of Latin going. Yeah. So, 3, 2, 1. Felix dies divisit. Felix dies divisit. Felix dies cara Agnes. Felix dies divisit. Feliciter. Euge, euge. Euge, euge is like the Roman yay, yay. Woo. Fantastic. Now, I had a great time chatting. We didn't have a lot of questions, but the video will stay there. You still have time to write to me and let me know if you have any questions. Questions that you may want to ask me. Things like, oh, we're doing this set text and I don't know where to find an English translation. I can help with that. Or, oh, we need to learn however many words we can find a mnemonic for that. I can help with that. And also, remember, there's the community as well. You can ask in the community, and other parents may have been through the same thing. Now, so having said happy birthday to Agnes and having talked about the best ways to learn Latin vocabulary, it's time to say goodnight to everyone. And I hope that you will be in touch and that your students will do incredibly well, because it is so amazing when you get a Latin text and you understand that and you're like, yes, I could now travel back in time, do anything. Yeah, so lovely seeing everyone. And please put your questions if you have them, and make sure if you're watching from from YouTube, that you check out the 11 plus ISEP SATS GCSE A-level and A-level resources group. Yeah. Walete, omne.